Hey Jay, how's it going, man?
Hey, John. Good to be with you. Thank you for reaching out to me, and let's have a good conversation.
Oh yeah, no, this is really exciting. We're getting down to the wire now. How are things looking? I guess let's talk about what you're doing. You've got a little campaign going, I hear.
I have a huge campaign going statewide. I'm running for Attorney General. This is my second time at it. I ran 4 years ago against Maura Healey. That was an interesting trip. I'll tell you what, Maura Healey is the face of evil for any gun owner in Massachusetts. She just somehow um, thinks that if you have a gun, you commit crimes. And so it was fun running against her. I lost. I intended to win. I ran hard. And an interesting story. The day that night when I lost that election in November 2018, I went home. I wasn't depressed, but I was disappointed. And I thought, well, I'll give it some time. So I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning. I nudged my wife and I said, hey, I know what I could do differently next time. She looked at me like she just bit into a lemon, and she goes, "Are you serious? Will you give it a break?" She goes, "Can we talk about this on vacation?" Because I promised her I'd take on vacation, win or lose. And I said, "Yes, we will." And I got to tell you something, John. If you want to sulk, a good place to do it is in the Caribbean.
That's great. You know, there's
we had we had a blast. We had a good time. But Maura Healey, she deserves the ire of all gun owners, and certainly in Massachusetts. But I'll tell you what, she causes more. She caused a hell of a lot more problems than she ever thought she solved. Do you know, or I should say, your listeners or your readers should know that 30,000 drug convictions have been overturned because of the incompetence and, dare I say, the corruption of her office.
that,
This person is the worst attorney general we have ever had, and she would be an even worse governor. And I hope that all your audience does not. I hope no one in your audience votes for her.
I really doubt that they will, and I'm really glad that you brought up Maura Healey. So I follow Massachusetts somewhat closely. I attended Mass Maritime, so I'm
We're
kind
right.
of
You were
yeah.
right in my office.
So I'm kind of a Bay Stater at heart and in spirit because I live in Jersey, so we've got awful politicians and laws as well. A lot of our Republicans look like some of your Republicans do, at least the
Well,
ones that are in office.
I'll tell you what. Your guy who ran for governor recently, he almost made it. Oh my word, we were all pulling for him too.
It was funny because Jack was on the top of the pile, and then mysteriously in the middle of the night, the counts changed. But never mind that. Um,
Right. No, yeah, I hear you. Those things happen, and they happen in strange and mysterious ways. My father used to say.
yeah.
Yep.
So Maura Healey, and you're running for Attorney General. You've actually got quite a bit of work. I don't say to do, but to undo.
That's a good way to say it. A lot of work to undo. So let me tell you what the lay of the land here is in Massachusetts. So you have me. I'm a Republican. Um, I've been married for 30 years to my wife. We're the parents of 5 children. After high school, I went to the Massachusetts Army National Guard. While I was there in the National Guard, some officers approached me and said, "Kid, you seem like a good candidate for officers candidate school." And they encouraged me to take the exams and everything, and I did all that. I did very well. I can remember standing in front of a general because they still interview you no matter how good you do, they interview you because they want to make sure that you're going to be the kind of officers they want. So I get in there. I was 18 years old. I was 19, turned 19 while I was in there, and the general said to me, he asked me a few questions, and then he looked at me and he said, he looked me right in the eye. And he goes, "If we let you in here, are you going to screw up?" I looked him right in the eye. I stood up, I saluted him, and I said, "No, sir, I won't. I won't betray the honor and dignity of being a cadet in this academy." And he goes, all right, you'll hear back from us." One of the adjutants who was there told me afterwards that the general was very impressed and that he goes, "I know this kid won't screw up. That's why we're going to do it." I was the youngest guy in the academy, and I loved it. So I became a lieutenant in the military police. I was trained to command battalion-level organizations with over 1,000 people. I also got my. I should say, I also went into law enforcement because, the National Guard, once you get done with your basic training, which is a couple of months, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky for my basic training. And when I got done, I came back and I was working for the county sheriff's office. And I also became a municipal police officer here on Cape Cod. Later, and during that same time, I went to UMass, and I got my Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration, and I got my law degree from Suffolk University in Boston. During those times, when I wasn't being a policeman or working for the county sheriff's office, I worked for large organizations like Cape Cod Bank and Trust, got a Taylor Oil Company here on Cape Cod, which was the largest home heating oil in southeastern Massachusetts. And I also worked for Cape Cod Hospital as a payroll manager. So I have, and they have over 2,000 employees at Cape Cod Hospital. But I've got management experience in top levels of large organizations. Now, the Attorney General's office has 500 lawyers. So it's a huge law firm, along with many other paralegals, staff people, secretaries and clerks and stuff like that. So it's a large organization. It requires you have to be a lawyer to be the Attorney General, but it requires someone who has a lot of experience in dealing with large organizations. Well, that would be me, because my other opponents, all three of them on the Dem side, they boiled them all down to one. The person who's there now has no management experience whatsoever, has no trial experience.
That's Campbell, right?
Yep, Andrea Campbell.
Okay.
Where I've got 35 years as a lawyer. I have had thousands of cases in Massachusetts at every level of court, both state and federal. And I have been before almost every federal, state, and municipal board or commission. So I've got vast experience in almost every area of the law where the Attorney General appears. So, I mean, when it comes to handling all of the litigation for the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I mean, hands down, I'm well qualified. My opponent is not qualified at all in any category. So, I mean, there you have it, John, when it comes to differences between just looking at the lay of the land.
Oh yeah, sure. And some of that that work that you have to, what I'm going to say, undo, and maybe you have a different opinion on the matter. Let's talk about semi-automatic rifles in the state of Massachusetts and what happened over the last few years and what perhaps needs to happen going forward.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. For your audience, this is an easy one. On day one, I have made this commitment. Well, let me give you a little history first before I tell you what I'm going to do on day one. In June of 2016, Maura Healey issued her infamous edict. It was known as an enforcement notice. Basically, it had a whole bunch of long guns on it that she said are illegal to sell in Massachusetts. And she said she's going to enforce the so-called assault weapons ban in Massachusetts. There is no such thing as an assault weapons that are being sold in the gun shops in Massachusetts, even prior to this edict. Now, her definition of assault weapons are military guns. I can tell you right now, there is no army on planet Earth, by any of the 193 countries and principalities, that use AR-15s or any other so-called assault weapon, because she thinks AR stands for assault rifle. None of them have AR-15s in their arsenal. So for her to call them military weapons is crazy. And no army would have them because they would be outgunned. So you and I know the commonality between all firearms. There's only three components. There's a barrel. I call it a tube. There's a tube, which is a barrel. There's a firing mechanism, which sets off the cartridge. And there's a projectile, which is the bullet. They all have this. Everything else around that is an accessory. It doesn't make the gun stronger, more powerful, or quicker, or any of that. In Massachusetts, the only guns that are able to be sold to the general public with a license to carry or a firearms identification card is a single pull shot. That's it. So what she wants to ban, in essence, are scary-looking guns. And that is the essence of it. And my argument has always been, if I have a scary gun and somebody kicks open my front door and I greet them with that, I may not have to shoot it, because that alone would be enough to deter anybody. And yet, all the accessories around the gun may make it a little more accurate if you got a scope, or if you have like what I've got on some of mine. I won't say what I've got because I don't want her knocking on my door. But I can tell you some of the things that I have. I have a Seazall sight, which I absolutely love because it's dead accurate, and yet I can see everything down the range, as opposed to a scope where you have to kind of find your target in the scope if it's really refined. And so, to me, so people have been asking, because we haven't done it in Massachusetts yet, but they're getting there. Unless I become the Attorney General, they're working their way there. And her successor, if it's not me, will certainly work this way about limiting the number of guns that people in Massachusetts can have. To me, some people ask me, well, how many is enough? And I said, I'm sorry, but the Constitution says shall not be infringed, not three or too many.
Right.
So,
I think there's a technical formula for this. It's how many you have plus one, right? So that's how many do you need? You need how many you
right.
have plus one.
My feeling is Wyatt Earp, well, not so much him, but Wild Bill Hickok, he taught us that you can only fire two guns at once and not be very accurate at it. So to me, you can only fire one at a time to be good at it. So what difference does it make what kind of a collection you have? I mean, it's ludicrous. I mean, cars cause accidents all the time, according to their thought. Who cares whether I got a garage full of 10 cars? I can only drive one at a time. It's crazy to say we got to limit people. If the Second Amendment is what it is, and I will take an oath to uphold it, by the way, I'm going to be upholding the whole Constitution, but that's part of it. Then it says shall not be infringed. Now, if it says shall not be infringed, and society thinks that maybe there should be some limited infringement, that better be extremely limited. Like perhaps maybe to the insane, and perhaps maybe to people who are proven to be violent and deadly, without with no rationale at all to it. Well, I can see that kind of limitations, but I can't see any else. I believe them when they sat around that table and said, "Hey, of all the rights, this one here, we should put a caveat on it that says shall not be infringed," because they knew, the founding fathers knew, that this is an issue and it will always be an issue to come. And they also knew that that's what started off the Revolutionary War in 1775 when the British were heading to Lexington and Concord. They were heading there to take all the gunpowder. Everybody that studied history knows that. And so our founding fathers knew that at some point, tyranny, because we apparently can't hang on to a real republic, that tyranny would eventually be the government of the day. And they wanted to make sure as best they could that that would not happen by having a population that was armed.
And quite ironically, the birthplace of that whole revolution, being Massachusetts, is also now like the front lines in battling for our civil liberties. So I always found that interesting. So your day one plan on semi-automatic rifles is what? If I could just get a quick summary.
The enforcement notice issued by my predecessor, Maura Healey, in June of 2016 is hereby rescinded and revoked.
Okay.
That's what it's going to be. And I will do it. I will issue a statement as to that. And then what I intend to do is we had an attorney general, a couple of attorney generals prior to Maura Healey. They were all dead. The last 60 years, they've all been Democrats. And in fact, the last Republican attorney general was Elliot Richardson, who later went to and worked in the cabinet of Richard Nixon. So that tells you how long ago it was that we had a Republican attorney general. But we are getting traction here. But getting back to what you and I were just talking about, Scott Harshbarger issued a series of regulations that I have looked at, but I'm going to look at it with a staff of constitutional people, because I believe that even those regulations are unconstitutional. But I don't want to talk out of school. I want to wait till I get there and look at them, because they may require further revision and in some cases revocation. So we'll be looking at that. To me, I know the statistics. No lawful gun owner in Massachusetts has ever committed a gun crime except for maybe storage issues. And to me, those are just cheap shots. I've seen some of those storage issues where a guy has some guns out on his table, and for some reason or another, the cops show up looking for something else, and they see the guns there, and he's either working on them, looking at them, touching them, whatever he's doing. And because he either left the table to go up and answer the door, or some crazy little nuance that the cops see, and all of a sudden he's charged with improper gun storage. Those are the only cases I know in Massachusetts where lawful gun owners have been charged with any crimes. And I don't know what the percentage is of conviction rate. My hunch is some courts will say, no, I don't think so, and don't find them guilty for it. But those are the only charges that I have ever seen in Massachusetts where a lawful gun owner is charged with a gun crime.
Oh, absolutely. One other thing I just want to cover right quick before I give you the floor completely. So recently we had some big news coming from the Supreme Court, and in the wake of all of that, I've noticed and covered and followed quite a bit of tit for tat and back and forth between Healy's office and the gun rights groups concerning your need clauses, and I forget what do they call it specifically in Massachusetts.
Right,
Right, your need clause.
right.
The matter
Yeah,
of what is it? A suitable person? Is that what they're using for the verbiage?
yeah. They got two terms that they use. One is called prohibited person, and the other one is called suitability. Suitability is just it's a very fuzzy term. In Massachusetts, the licensing authority is is the police chief or police commissioner of any of cities or towns in Massachusetts. Now, here's the problem with that. The Second Amendment is individual rights against the government. They're not granted by the government. It's those unalienable rights that's spoken about in the Declaration of Independence. That there are certain rights, and among these, it doesn't say that is the total of those rights. But if you read the Second Amendment, it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It doesn't say the people shall have a right to keep and bear arms. So the right was already understood as pre-existing to the Constitution, which means it's one of those unalienable rights spoken of in the Declaration of Independence. That is, unalienable rights given to us by our Creator. Now, that's what our founding fathers declared. No court has overturned them, but what they have done has been just what it wants them not to do. They've infringed upon it. Now, in Massachusetts, you got to ask a government official for the right to exercise your Second Amendment. And to me, right away, that alone, that scenario violates the Constitution. But let's go one step further. So you go to your local police chief, and you could be in a nice town where the police chief is a patriotic American, took the oath of office like every single one has, and says, yes, I really need to find a problem not to give you a license to carry. I really need to find a problem, a serious problem that would go with that would be with the Constitution. That's very difficult to do. So that's in the first 5 items of the statute in Massachusetts. But the sixth one is suitability. Suitability says if the police chief thinks because you had a restraining order back a couple of years ago, or you had a drunk driving charge, not that there was a gun in the car, you just had a drunk driving charge. And some prosecutor talked you into pleading guilty and paying a small fine, and that was the end of it. And now, 20 years later, that's haunting you. So you can't have a license to carry in Massachusetts. It's disgraceful. It's disgusting. It's certainly against the Constitution. But that's what we got. So now that's called suitability. Then you have prohibited persons. Prohibited persons are felons. I know a guy who wrote a check. He was a contractor. He wrote a check for some masonry supplies, and the check was for about $500. For whatever reason, when he wrote the check, and for the next 2 months, he had money in his account. The masonry store deposited the check about 2.5 months later. In the meantime, the IRS seized my guy's funds. And you know, when the IRS levies, they just take everything. They don't care. They don't even ask you. They don't even tell you it's coming. And it came. So my guy scrambled to do things. Well, with no money, he wasn't able to cover the check. So the guy wound up filing a criminal complaint against my guy. And my guy went to court. And he took a guilty filed, and he made restitution. So he's a felon. He can never have a gun license in Massachusetts. You follow me?
I absolutely do. I'm waiting for the
This, yeah,
for the
this
other
is the
shoe to fall, because
this is
there
the
used
stuff
to
that,
be a mechanism to fix all of this federally, and that's kind of been defunded. But carry on, Jay.
well, so my point in all this was the guy who I know would certainly be a great guy. He would be a great guy for somebody that should have a license to carry. If in fact, I mean, it's passed on other courts, it's past constitutional consideration.
I think this is all going to come to a head here shortly, and I think there's already cases that are involving nonviolent felons that are being reconsidered. And between you and me, I think that this is going to go by the wayside in due time, except for that suitable persons clause. So when the New York State Rifle Pistol Association opinion came down, Healy and Baker, oh my gosh, they both kind of dug in and said, well, we're not going to enforce the need clause anymore, but we still want you to answer the need clause so we can figure out your suitability. And suitability, in my opinion, is also against New York State Rifle Pistol Association, because you're either qualified, set forth by the disqualifiers, or you're not. And the suitability requirement looks at things on a case by case basis, where things are interest balanced, and because they're interest balanced and it's a fundamental right, it's unconstitutional. Am I right? Am I thinking here?
Okay, so the way you're thinking like a person who's a little bit above average in intelligence, who has read the Constitution and says, "Boy, that's what it says," and everybody who is supposed to be enforcing this has taken an oath to enforce it, just like it says. Hey, how come they're not doing what it says? Well, because they don't either they don't believe in their oath, they don't believe in the Constitution, or they have some woke mentality that says they're a little bit smarter than the founding fathers, or they're a little bit smarter than everybody else around them. And that's the problem I have with woke government officials, who Maura Healey in particular, because she represents the cream of the crop when it comes to woke people. During the pandemic, Governor Baker shut down the gun shops all over Massachusetts, saying that they were not essential businesses. A good friend of mine, who's a trial attorney, represented the gun owners and also the gun shop owners, and he sued Baker and he won. And basically, the Supreme Judicial Court agreed that that it would be a violation of the Constitution to shut these shops down. Maura Healey's argument was that by keeping these shops open, guns would be available to people, and that police officers would be in danger. Now, listen to her logic that lawful licensed gun owners would, I guess, be shooting at police officers or something, because you can't gather anything else from that argument. Or she was just grabbing stuff out of the air and saying it. But I think she may actually believe that nonsense. And to me, this is the problem that we have when people don't want to read the Constitution and uphold it according to their oath of office.
Well, you guys definitely have your work cut out for you, Jay, 100%. Before I cut you loose, I just want to ask another question here. When people look for you on the ballot, how's your name going to be on the ballot?
It's James R. McMahon III. Jay is a nickname. It's a nickname for James as well as Jimmy. A lot of people, if somebody calls me Jimmy, I know that they really don't know me, but I still answer to it. But my friends, like you, John, my friends call me Jay. Um, but most people know that because I'm the only McMahon running for Attorney General, and all my signs say McMahon for Attorney General.
Well, I just wanted to make sure we got that out there and made it sure it was crystal clear. Do you have any parting thoughts for my readers and listeners?
Well, I'll tell you what. Um, there's a lot of there's a lot of folks who are praying for this country. Folks of my generation and and, uh, and the generations up and coming behind my generation, and they've been praying for this country. They've been praying for the government. They are looking for something to happen. They know that Massachusetts was the cradle of liberty. And I've heard a lot of people say that if it's going to happen, if there's going to be a huge change, it's going to happen in Massachusetts. Well, I sure hope they're right. I'm hoping that we're going to see some real change here in Massachusetts. Right now, we've got a crime wave going on in Massachusetts. My opponent wants to defund the police and take away their qualified immunity. I don't see how that is going to solve the crime wave. But that's what happens when you have a woke philosophy compared to, I should say, me and other candidates like me who have a constitutional philosophy.
Oh, absolutely, Jay. How could people find you? How could they follow you? How could they support you?
Okay. The best thing for them to do is to go on to my website. And my website is www.attorney.jmcmahon. So you spell out attorney, Attorney. Jay is Jay. McMahon is McMahon. There's no spaces in there. And then .com. That's my website. Or they can go to my Facebook page at Attorney J McMahon. If they go there, they can find a lot of stuff about me. If they want to send me an email really is the best way to get a hold of me because we check our email every hour. If you send me an email, it doesn't go into cyberspace. We answer it, and we get the information to the people they want. And sometimes we can tell by the way they're asking where the perspective they're coming from. But I still give them answers because uh, they deserve it. They're voters. They're people who are inquiring, and they deserve an honest answer. And my email address is info@attorneyjmcmahon.com. So that's the best way to get a hold of us. If you want to contribute to my candidacy, we can take donations from anywhere in the United States and U.S. territories. But the maximum, because this is a statewide office and not a federal office. So because it's statewide, we're under state rules, and we can only per person per calendar year. So for
Say that
this
again.
next,
How much per person?
only $1,000 per person. Now, somebody might say, "What do you mean only 1,000?" Oh, I've had a lot of people who have contacted me from out of state and said, "Hey, we like what you're doing. We want to support you. We're going to send you such and such." You can only send $1,000. That's the law in Massachusetts. And between now and the end of the year, the election is November 8th. So if anybody in your audience wants to send money to me, and I'm sure you've got some well-heeled people as well. $1,000 is the limit, and it's to McMahon Committee. That's MCMAHON Committee. That's all they have to put on the checks, McMahon Committee, or else they can go on the Facebook page or the website. There's a donate button. You can hit it there.
All right, Jay. Well, I definitely appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing how this fleshes out. It's a very exciting time, and I too am very interested in this race. So I wish you the best.
Well, John, I'll tell you what. Another thing, although we didn't touch on it, another big, huge problem in Massachusetts is the opioid crisis. We don't have to talk about it today, but if your audience is interested in that, they can go on my website or they can go on my Facebook page. I've got a lot of information on the opioid crisis, and I visited Methadone Mile, which is in Boston. That's where everybody lines up for their methadone daily methadone treatment. I actually went up and visited the people there, spoke to them. To be honest, they all know that the government rehabilitation programs are failures, but the private pay programs have an 85% success rate. And when I say success, I mean coming off of opiates completely, not swapping them out for like methadone, Vivitrol, or Suboxone, but coming off completely. They're 85% successful. I want to duplicate that on the government programs so that we can give these people their lives back. If anybody's interested in that, they can go ahead and see it on my website and on my Facebook page.
All right, Jay. Well, I'll definitely put some information out there on that as well, and thank you very much for your time.
All right, John. Good talking to you. Hope to talk to you again.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Jay. Take care. Bye bye now.